I'm Mike Weir, Chief Revenue Officer at GTM, the world's largest and most trusted software marketplace. And welcome to Go-to-Market Innovators, a series where we sit down with B2B revenue and marketing leaders to learn about the successes they've had, the challenges they've faced, and how they've used technology to create an aligned sales and marketing organization to drive their businesses forward. Welcome to the latest episode of Go-to-Market Innovators. Today, we have Robert Rose joining us. He is the founder of the Content Advisory and Chief Strategy Advisor with the Content Marketing Institute. Though according to his LinkedIn, he's actually the chief troublemaker for the Content Advisory. So we might need to get into that later on, Robert, a little bit more about what are you getting up to over there that everybody's giving you that moniker. In addition to everything that he's doing in his day jobs, he's a known author, keynote speaker, investor, and advisor to tech startups. Robert, I am extremely excited to tap into the 2 decades plus of knowledge that you have. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, well, it's an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited for our conversation today, for sure.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this one because, of course, you have a lot of great insights to share, but more specifically, you're one of the godfathers, my term for it, at least, one of the godfathers of content marketing, at least even modern content marketing, and how to build audiences. I can't wait to hone in on some of that as we talk about what you're seeing out there that CROs, CMOs, and go-to-market professionals can learn from.
Yeah. Well, and Joe Pulizzi might have a little bit to say about that whole Godfather thing, but I'm going to go ahead and wear it very proudly. So
please do.
We'll get T-shirts made for sure.
Yeah. Joe's not here right now, so
yeah, exactly.
when he watches this, he's welcome to comment and try to start a debate on YouTube of who is the true Godfather at the round table.
Yes,
the Don of Dons. We'll have that debate. That's actually a great follow-up conversation for the next episode. But to the knowledge and the expertise that you have on the industry, I would love to get into just some of the biggest challenges and, frankly, the opportunities that those present. What are the biggest challenges that you see today?
Well, I think it all stems from one of the things that we say a lot is that at the end of the day, content is communication. And this may be a little bumper stickery, but one of the things that we've just seen over and over and over again is that 90% of a great content strategy or 90% of a great content marketing strategy has really nothing to do with the content at all, but it's all about how are we communicating with the internal teams that we have. And we talk a lot about sales and marketing alignment right now. And what ends up happening is that marketing starts to see sales as simply a distribution channel of content, and sales starts to see marketing as a vending machine of content, and don't really communicate terribly well about the value add that content can actually infuse into that buyer's journey. So what you end up with is sales teams that really misunderstand how to deliver content. In other words, they don't know how to do anything other than say, I'll send you the latest white paper, or I'll send you the latest piece of content, or I'll send you a link to the latest blog post. And you've got marketing teams who are constantly acting in an on-demand fashion of salespeople who are saying, just give me more of what I need last time. And it's a fascinating challenge. And ultimately, it is a marketing challenge because salespeople can't fix this on their own. And marketing must fix the communication because that is the heart of the content strategy. And so it really is a marketing problem that we have to solve into how do we start enabling sales teams and the sales process to be a much more integrated part of what it is we're doing these days.
Yeah, you hit on a nerve on that one because I've lived in both worlds, right? I've been on the marketing side and I've now been on the revenue side of it. And so like you, I think I'm seeing the pitfalls of the finger pointing, of the not really understanding how complementary. And I think enablement is one of those key things that you mentioned that we'll dig in on much more. So these are big, large challenges. I'd love to dig in a little bit more and hear your perspective. What are some of the tactical ways that teams can work better together to overcome these misalignments, these misdiagnosing what each other's role is in the process?
Yeah, there are really two that we can talk about, but it sort of overarches into that idea that at the end of the day, when we don't communicate, when those two groups don't communicate with one another, and it is one buyer's journey, right? In other words, we so often get into a place where marketing believes that there is a marketing process, and then ultimately sales believes there is a sales process, and there's some magical handoff that's supposed to happen there that never quite does, right? And so it's all ultimately a customer's journey. And apostrophe S there because it is their journey. It's not our journey, it's their journey. We are trying to help facilitate it in the best way possible. And so ultimately marketing gets accused or really does in some cases of delivering this tsunami of content, this overwhelming wave of content that sales doesn't end up using. And sales then ends up demanding more and saying, hey, they're not listening to us. We're not getting to what it is we need. And so one is, how can we as marketers, as the marketing team and sales team, start working together to actually enable sales to become part of the story, right? To become the source of the story so that sales truly has a strategic value as part of the customer's journey. In other words, if the conversation goes, hey, hey, sales guy, I just got this amazing white paper from your team and it's got all this wonderful information. And the sales guy goes, yeah, I don't really know what you're talking about. Then you've just done two things. You've ruined that salesperson's chances with that prospect forever, because not only has the salesperson provided no value, they've actually provided negative value because they're actually taking away value from the thing that you sent to the customer. And then the idea is, how do we start enabling sales by reducing the amount of content that we're actually producing, but give them because they don't have time necessarily to become deep individual subject matter experts, although that's a whole other topic. But it's really, how do we start enabling them with content about the content? In other words, what is the meta content that says, here's what this white paper is, here's where it's going out, here's how to speak to it, here's how to really generate value when you're talking to it. So that conversation, when the customer calls and says, hey, I just got this amazing new white paper from your organization, the sales is like, I know, right? How on page 36, did you do the ROI calculator that they told you to do? And hey, there's this other piece of content and I can walk you through that. And basically it becomes a much more valuable part of the customer's journey there. And we can start segmenting, and this gets to the second piece. We can start, as marketers, start segmenting our thought leadership into what we call a 3-tiered idea, which is to really better understand the value and the intent of the customer based on their overall desires and what they're getting at it. Is it visionary? Is it the implications of that vision? Or is it how to? And if we can get to that, we can really start to put together a much more conjoined journey for the customer.
Yeah. So the meta enablement makes all the sense in the world when you really have to help the team understand the context of what you're talking about and that perspective. I think the part that you've advocated for is the storytelling part within sales, which, having been on this side, like, that is so important to be able to bring context and expertise to the conversations that we're having with the customers. And I just love it if you can bring more enablement practice, as the CRO listeners are watching, listening right now. Like, you got to be thinking about the enablement, and you've got to be leaning on your CMO peers to make sure that that's part of their planning process, part of their rollout process.
Yeah, I mean, but some of the biggest, when we hear from CROs or VPs of sales, the biggest complaint and the most common complaint we always hear is, look, my team doesn't have time to go and get, educated into this, 42 volumes of, thought leadership. They just don't have time for that. They've got to be on the phone. They've got to be working relationships. They've got to be doing these things. Secondarily, we don't have systems to be able to find it anyway, right? We need to be able to find things quickly for contextual conversations that my team needs to have, because it's at a conference, it's an inbound call, it's an outbound call, and we finally got the C-level person on the line, whatever it is. So we need to make it much easier for them to do find the right content, and then not only find the right content, but quickly give the sales team the ability to deliver that content in a way that is powerful. And the only way to do that is to really reduce the amount of content we're creating and create a much more enabled process.
Yeah. And you just touched on it. You used the word tsunami earlier and just directly stated, like, we just got to reduce the amount.
Yeah.
Now, there's a challenge here as the marketer because you are being asked to cover content across everything, all scenarios, all solutions. And sometimes it's just about focus. So
Yeah.
I'm curious from your perspective, how do you solve that conundrum of overproducing content? Like, is there a practical set of ideas, advice that you would provide for, really for the marketers that are listening in right now to like avoid doing these things?
There's again, well, there, I will come back to that three-tiered idea in just a moment, but one of the most practical things we can do is to get out of this mindset of, one of the things that we find when we go and do content audits, for example, content marketing audits of an organization, is the feeling is we produce too much content. The
Hmm.
feeling is that we just produce way too much content and none of it gets used. And what we usually find is no, what it is we produce too many digital assets, right? We produce way too. So, and the reason for that is because the way that sales requests content from typically the marketing team, and in many ways the rest of the business requests marketing content from the rest of the marketing team, is as assets. In other words, our first inclination is to say, I need an ebook, I need a white paper, I need an email, I need a one sheet, I need whatever the container is. And the idea is, how do we start reversing that thinking, where we start with, what's the big rock story that we have? What's one big rock story or big campaign or initiative or story we want to tell? And really fine tune that, really get good at it. And really, by the way, develop all that enabling content around that story. Here's how to deliver it to a CEO. Here's how to deliver it to a practitioner. Here's how to deliver it to a procurement officer. And then now we can start talking about all the different containers that it might be appropriate to put that story in. Much fewer bigger stories that get expressed in the multiple digital assets, which one helps us keep track of it, what we're talking about in a big idea. And two, it helps us really sort out to make sure that we're being consistent. And so that really we really create that communication with that one big story. In other words, that big ass white paper that we created last quarter, it's probably still good. In other words, it's probably really great. But because it was created last quarter, everybody goes, oh, well, we have to do something new. We have to do something bigger. We have to do something. Why? Let's make sure that we're repurposing and reusing the big stories that we come up with as much as possible. And then we can start that three-tiered segmentation like I talked about before.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of the idea of the big rock strategy,
Yeah.
right? And I think um, I can speak from my own personal history when I was at LinkedIn and we were building a partnership with the Content Marketing Institute and we were coming to content marketing world.
Yeah.
The idea, our marketing team was rallying around the big rock strategy. And the thing that we talked about in planning between sales and the marketing team is like, what do we need to be known for? And to your whole central premise from the beginning is like, you got to tell great stories, and marketing helps enable that. And a salesperson can't have 100 stories that they're mastering, but like,
That's right.
you pick the one or two things you want to be known for that are core to your subject matter expertise, your thought leadership. Makes all the sense in the world. And it goes even farther in what you guys have been talking about for Big Rock is like, you build around one idea, one thing you want to be known for, and you slice it up into a lot of other pieces. And that's, then that's all the digital assets the marketing team needs, but it's still one idea that the sales team has to know and be experts in.
We spend so much time training and getting our sales teams and others in the business. This isn't just exclusive to sales, but it's really across the organization. We spend so much time getting everybody to parrot out the right words through the brand, what the product, give me the one line of the product, give me the one paragraph, give me the value proposition, it's drilled into your head, right? So sales teams typically know exactly what to say when it comes to a value proposition, but we spend scant amount of time getting consistency and clarity over that one big point of view that we have about the world. Like, what do we believe? What's our thought leadership story? What is it, that one thing we want to be known for? And we spend very little time developing a messaging architecture around that point of view or that story or that big rock. And we can get so much more bang for our buck if we help our salespeople at least appear to be experts in the topic that they're talking about, or at least not appear as if they don't know what the hell they're talking about at all.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. One of the things that inevitably has to come up is you're thinking about a big rock strategy, and then you're talking about all the digital assets that come from that rock, all the pebbles, as you've said it in other forums before. How much of this are you gating? How much of
Ah,
this are you getting
yeah.
in the way of your customer experience with? Expand on that. What's your perspective there? Because I know the marketers and the sellers that are listening in, they're like, gate it. I want leads. I want
Sure.
people to call. I don't think they may like the initial way we'll answer this one.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's two attributes. I mean, about gating, and the key is that the trap, the pitfall, or the pothole, if you will, whatever metaphor you like, that we fall into as businesses is that we look at gating as either as binary, right? You either gate it or you don't. And and even to the most extreme, which I find just amazing in 2023, is that it's all to one kind of form, right? In other words, we gate everything or we gate nothing. And when we gate it to the same form that asks for 18 different levels of information, because God help us if we don't capture it all in that one moment. And so that's the real understanding that we have to have is gating does not have to be binary. You can do things like, you do a great research report, you gate the full research report, but you give half of it away, for free or for SEO, or in an unstructured or structured way that's a little different. Or you do it time based, where it's gated for the first week that it exists, but then you ungate it after. Looking at gating vis-a-vis our goals, and again, coming back to that sort of three-tiered idea, are we creating something of just broad awareness? Can't imagine why you would want to gate something that's built for broad awareness. Just there's no reason to do that. If you're gating something that is an absolutely critical piece of that customer's journey and the middle or bottom of the funnel, yeah, gate it. But then ask, what information do I need? One of my favorite things these days is not asking for first name, last name, and email address. When we need it, we need it. But if you don't need it, why are we asking for it? Why not gate it with something more interesting that provides, for example, intention? Like, one of my favorite experiments to do is at certainly at an awareness or maybe mid funnel level, start having thought leadership where the gate isn't first name, last name, email address that immediately goes into some drip campaign, but rather just a gate like, why do you want this paper? What's your motivation? Are you exploring this for purchase? Are you looking at this just because you're curious about the topic? Are you a competitor? Whatever your sort of what answers you want, but start thinking about the acquisition of data as a means of getting insight into the intention of the customer, rather than just accumulating personal information that somehow equates to a lead.
Yeah, that's it's a really interesting approach. It's almost like a research-based approach that really informs what value are people hoping to get out of this content. Then, do we actually think we're delivering that? I got to say, you just gave me an idea that we'll be talking with our marketing team about as well.
Yeah.
I think that's genius to think about it in that way. You know,
We talk a lot about progressive profiling, and it's the sexiest thing that nobody does, right? We just don't build, we don't ask ourselves, why do we want this data and what value can we offer in return? One of my favorite things to do is to say, okay, should we gate this content and what data do we need? And I say, pretend you're sitting on a park bench next to that customer and you're asking them for this information. What information would you feel comfortable asking them for on that park bench as you sit next to them? And if you're like, what's your name? What's your email address? What's your buying stage? Who are you? Tell me your budget levels and all that kind of stuff. It's like, if that would make you feel a little skeevy, well, think about how it makes them feel.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I was just thinking about Forrest Gump for a moment there,
Yeah.
and yeah, so this is the newly coined Forrest Gump
There
criteria.
you go. Yeah. Well, you
Uh,
never know what you're going to get.
exactly. I think this belies a couple of really interesting points here because if you get exceptionally smart about gating and not gating, and I think adding to that thought of like, if I'm doing research based gating, research based questioning,
Yeah.
it all informs the payoff of, hey, we're going to actually have a conversation with a potential customer or an existing customer now. Sales teams, whether it's CSMs, AEs, relationship managers, like they've got to be bought in to being a great storyteller. So if you're talking to the skeptical CROs that are listening in right now, like, why should I invest my team's time and how do I convince them that they have to commit to being a great storyteller?
Hmm.
What's the rationale from your perspective of getting them over that hump to say, yeah, commit to this, make time for this?
It goes to there's some really good work being done in this space, which is the challenge that we have today. What one of the unintended consequences of everything we've done in content marketing, thought leadership, and generating as much content as we have is, you know, is this buying problem that exists today.
Yep.
It's not a selling problem; it's a buying problem. In other words, now we always get wrapped up in this idea of the key of what it means to actually go out and buy something today, buy something complex, right? Buy something where there's going to be a buying committee and a team, et cetera. And we always think, oh, the buyer is so much more happy with this situation because so much more of the buying journey is done and so much more of the research is done before they talk to a salesperson and they don't take phone cold calls and all that. And all of that's true. All that data is true. But we've never bothered to ask the buyer to say, do you like this? Are you happy with this? Is this making an emotional connection with you? And it's not typically. If you look at the research, they don't want to become subject matter experts. They don't want to do all this research. They don't want to check all the boxes and say, pile up 50 pages of PDFs on their desks and looking and becoming an expert in this thing that they're buying. And yet that's the expectation. So the reason that CROs and VP should buy into this is because you're no longer differentiating in that journey, in that customer's journey. When it comes to sales, when it comes to sort of mid and lower funnel and lower journey expectations, you're not competing with the Google search, right? You're not competing with all the things that they're doing. They're doing that on their own. Thank you very much. And your competitors are informing them very well. Thank you very much. What you're competing with is that 50 pages of PDF, right? That they've got stacked up on their desk as they start making some decisions about who's going to be on the short list, who they're going to call back, who they're going to get demos from, who they're going to do proof of concepts with, whatever those things are, right? So that's where our competition is these days. And so we can be the ones to deliver all sorts of visionary, this is why you should change, and this is our solution and how it's paradigm shifting and all those kinds of things. Or we can help them change, or we can help them make, a specific decisions. And I dare say in the stack of 50, if you start helping people change, if you start helping them actually facilitate the change they're looking to change, they will be more appreciative and you will sell more and they will buy more from you.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think underlying this is one thing I've heard you advocate for as well. It's just like you're building trust.
Yes.
If you're telling great stories, then you know the material. You're helping them cut through some of the 50 pages plus of analysis that they're trying to do, and they're like, "Yeah, I believe in your opinions." And I've seen it firsthand. Very,
Yeah.
very impactful. Helps customers. Helps me. Like I buy from people that I trust for sure.
That's right. Yeah, it's like one of the things that I'm commonly telling VPs of sales and VPs of marketing as they start thinking about this level of content is, yeah, you can be the FAQ or you can be the rarely given answer, right? In other words, what are they not getting? What are the implications of them actually saying yes? Like, why not deliver content like that says, here's what's going to happen when you say yes to this change, when you say yes to this solution, because what that does is that it engenders trust and it engenders the fact that you've got confidence to say, listen, we've got a great solution and here's how it works and here are the implications and here's what's going to happen when you say yes. We may not be right for you, and that's okay, because if it's not right for you, then at least you trust us enough to either make a recommendation and or ultimately conclude that we may be right for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And as we go to closing in the next couple of minutes here, I have two more quick questions for you. You've
Yeah.
touched on this in part of the conversation already. So let's just be like really explicit. Technology plays a role in making
Mm.
all of this possible. You mentioned making content discoverable. You mentioned enabling the revenue organization to deliver on these messages, and obviously alluded to the whole process that goes into marketing content production and all that. What are the core technologies that you advocate everybody be thinking about or explicitly using today? Like, what are the product types that folks
Yeah,
should be?
and we need more technology, said no marketing person ever. But it there are technologies that are available today that are starting to enable some of the things that we've just spent the last 25 minutes talking about. And it's really centered on how do we start to connect
Mhm.
that journey, like connect from a data perspective and from an insight perspective, connecting that journey so that we're delivering sequentially more value at each step, and two, so that we actually have the insight to deliver value more holistically. And that's a big broad way of saying things like, we're seeing CDPs, customer data platforms, become very, very instrumental here in terms of centralizing, not just relying solely on a CRM system or a marketing automation system to get that insight into everything. In other words, if a customer subscribes to your blog and your email newsletter and your webinar program, are they in 3 databases or are they in one? And you're starting to build that profile on who's attended everything and how you're connecting those things. Marketing automation platforms are still big, and these days a little more focused in on crossing over into what's commonly being called the content experience or digital experience, DXPs, CXPs, whichever marketing clouds, acronym you like the best, is sort of that idea. Is how are we connecting the content of the experiences to provide ever more targeted, based on the data that we're accumulating, valuable experiences to those customers who are coming in, so that we're delivering the right thought leadership, we're delivering the right content to that right person at that time. And then, of course, CRM and analytics as sort of foundational elements of automating those processes to the extent possible. And then, of course, because it's been at least 25 minutes since we've mentioned AI, we have to start thinking about AI and how the automation of some of those processes is going to be helped with generative content.
Wow. A lot for us to digest within the whole conversation and the list of technologies. What's your final parting wisdom for our listeners?
I think in many ways, I'm wrapped up in this study that my friend Ardith Albee turned me on to, where they found that senior leadership in organizations, it was something just astronomically low, like 2%, meaning nobody, no leadership, senior leadership in organizations are finding zero humanity and empathy in B2B content these days. We've gotten so wrapped around the axle of data, numbers, research, dry thought leadership, visionary. This is what's going on in, paradigm shifting, blah, 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 synergies, blah, 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 that we've created nothing other than dry, beige thought leadership content. So it's broken, and it's created that buying challenge. We call it the myth of the empowered buyer, because they are not feeling empowered these days. These buyers, they are feeling lost. They're feeling like there's not a lot of human connection, and there's a huge opportunity to get in there and start providing humanity, empathetic, emotional content that delivers value at scale, and really transform your salespeople into not just a content distribution channel, but truly consultative, helpful subject matter experts.
Wow. I love that. Robert, thank you again so much for joining us and sharing all of your wisdom. I really enjoyed the discussion and hope everybody else listening did as well. Thank you again. Have a great day, everyone.